The Avalanche show why they're the best team in the league. The Sabres are looking for one more win to set a franchise record. Auston Matthews gets a major milestone, but when the Leafs get 2 points, and we had a unique double hat trick in San Jose. Details on that and more on this edition of Locked On NHL Game Night.
When that final horn sounds, you know it's time for Locked On NHL Game Night. All the post-game reactions to every game across the league, every single night, with insights only the hosts at Locked On can provide. Prepare to experience game day reactions like never before, only on Locked On NHL Game Night. Your team every day.
Hey, hockey fans, welcome to Locked On NHL Game Night, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 sports podcast network, your teams every day. Thanks for making Locked On NHL Game Night your place to get a recap of the night in the NHL during the regular season and the playoffs. We are available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Before tip-off, check the FanDuel app and see what's dropping during NBA Happy Hour every Friday from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. I'm Eddie Garcia, an LA Kings fan out on the West Coast and your host of Locked On LA Kings, doing the show solo tonight, but here to let you know about everything that happened in the night in the NHL, all the goals, saves, big moments, and stories, with a big assist from our Locked On local experts. We had a busy Saturday as usual, 13 games on the schedule, and let us begin with clearly the best team in the NHL. That's the Colorado Avalanche. They were on the road against the Hurricanes, or was it the Nordiques versus the Whalers, as they both wore those great throwback jerseys. But this was a battle of division leaders, and for a while, it looked like Carolina was going to get a big victory, and then Colorado turned it on in the third period and win 5-3. Let's get a report on this one from one of the co-hosts of Locked On Colorado Avalanche, and that's Chris Maselli.
Colorado Avalanche did not look good in the first two periods of this game in their matchup against the Carolina Hurricanes. They just looked disinterested, not as fast as they typically play, and they found themselves down 3-1 after two periods. And we've said all season long, the thing that's been hurting the Avs this year, really, I guess not hurting them because it's not hurting their record, but just the one area where they've been lacking is the power play. And you were starting to get the feeling that this was finally going to be a game where the power play lost it for them, because the first two periods looked bad and they were 0 for 3. You go to the start of the third period, Carolina commits a penalty seconds into the third period, and Brock Nelson scores a power play goal. And I don't know if it was a combination of that goal early in the third and it being a power play, and the Avalanche all season long have been dominant in the third period. Maybe a collection of all of that. And the Avs go on a 4-goal third period where they win this thing 5-3. And not only did they get one power play goal in the third, they got two. So if this is the game that gets that power play going, there's really nothing left for the Avalanche to be like, well, that's the one thing that we need to improve on for this season.
All right. Thanks to Chris Maselli for that. It may sound like, if you're a fan of a team that might be struggling a little bit, like that Chris is trying to be too picky with the best team in the league. But I do think it's a great point. Look, the Avalanche are in it this year to win it all. And that's the expectation. And they certainly look like they're the favorite. But when you're looking at maybe a weakness in the armor of this team, it's their power play, which is so strange because they have so many weapons. But the power play gets it done in this one. Brock Nelson with a pair of third period goals, Jack Drury, and then Nathan MacKinnon score as well. For MacKinnon, his NHL leading 35th goal of the season. And it has to be so demoralizing for especially a team like Carolina to know that the Avalanche can kind of snap their fingers and flip the switch and just turn it on and get it done on the road in the third period to get a victory. Colorado now 31-2-7 on the season. They've won 10 in a row, and their last loss was on December the 9th. For Carolina, they've dropped 3 in a row, although this was a battle of division leaders. Just 2 wins in the last 8 for the Hurricanes, but I think more significant for them is that they have had an issue this year holding on to leads at times. And they certainly did again in this one. But, kind of silver lining, they're still on top of the division. They're still a good team. But that is certainly something that they have to be concerned about going forward. We had the Buffalo Sabres in Columbus to take on the Blue Jackets, and Buffalo riding that 10-game winning streak. One more win, and they would set a new franchise record for consecutive victories. They would not get it. Columbus with the 5-1 victory and a much-needed win for them. Let's get a report on this one from the host of Locked On Columbus Blue Jackets, Jay Forster.
Blue Jackets redeemed themselves from the loss to the Devils the other night with a big 5-1 win over the Buffalo Sabres, ending their winning streak at 10 games. Just a really fun game. Everyone got involved. Everyone did just great. Goals from Brendan Gaunce, from Matthew Olivier, from Cole Sillinger with the empty net, from Denton Matejchuk, and from Dmitry Vronkov as well. So, like I said, everyone got involved. Basically, a quiet 2-point night for David Severson, for Zach Werenski. Ivan Provorov had a great night as well. I thought the absolute MVP for me, though, Jet Greaves. 30 saves on 31 shots, just one goal allowed. Just a rock star performance from him. And the Blue Jackets get to enjoy another win. This is their fourth in the last 5 games. They might be turning this ship around. We'll see what happens tomorrow when they face the Pittsburgh Penguins. We're going to break all of this down on tomorrow's Locked On Blue Jackets.
All right, thanks to Jay Forster for that report. All good things come to an end, I suppose, if you're the Buffalo Sabres. 10-game winning streak has certainly vaulted them back into relevance, has kept their dream alive of snapping that NHL record drought of consecutive seasons without a playoff appearance. They are a wild card team right now in the East, so the 10-game streak certainly did what it needed to do for the Buffalo Sabres. Now they have to just try and be more consistent the rest of the way. But Buffalo, kind of the dream of every kind of struggling team out there right now, that if the Sabres can do it, why can't we? But clearly Buffalo with that great winning streak comes to an end. But certainly, like I said, it did the job for them. It has got them back into playing relevant hockey, but a disappointing end to it, certainly against Columbus. We had the Maple Leafs taking on the Islanders and New York with the overtime win thanks to the number 1 pick in this year's NHL draft, who had a great game. Let's get a report on this one from the host of Locked On New York Islanders, Gil Martin.
The New York Islanders score a 4-3 overtime win over the Toronto Maple Leafs, and what an amazing game for Matthew Schaefer. This was his Hockey Night in Canada coming out party. He scores a Bobby Orr or Paul Coffey-like goal to make it 2-2. And then in overtime, he scores on a wicked wrist shot to win the game. 2 goals for Matthew Schaefer to overcome a game where the Islanders again had a little difficulty getting going offensively and went through some real lulls, but they stuck with it, stuck to it, and Schaefer just comes through. This kid is just getting started, and this is sort of an amazing performance by Matthew Schaefer that just is the beginning of what should be an amazing career. For more in-depth daily coverage of your New York Islanders, check out the Locked On Islanders podcast.
Thanks to Gil Martin for that report, and Matthew Schaefer is clearly a special player. I was at the NHL draft here in Los Angeles. I saw Matthew Schaefer up close. He's 18, looks younger than 18, and I thought this kid is going to take on the men of the NHL this season. And the answer is yes, he is, and he's doing special things. The first goal that Gil was talking about takes it at the blue line, cuts into the net, and makes it look very easy, scoring a gorgeous goal. And then the overtime game winner. I will say Matthew Barzal really made that OT game winner. A beautiful backhand pass. Schaefer was wide open in the slot. Barzal made the play, but Schaefer did have to finish it, and he did for his 12th goal of the season. He is a very, very special player for the Islanders. They've won 4 of 6. They are 1 point back of Carolina for first place in the Metropolitan Division. Meanwhile, for Toronto, I mentioned it earlier, Auston Matthews, a milestone for him, 2 goals, numbers 19 and 20. He ties and then passes Matt Sundin to become the Toronto Maple Leafs all-time leading goal scorer with 421 goals. Congrats to Auston Matthews for reaching that milestone and still plenty of time for him to add to that, as his career is right in the heart of it at this point. Toronto does get a point out of it, and in the Eastern Conference, every point counts. So they are 2 points out of the final wildcard spot in the East, but a nice milestone for Auston Matthews. And we have the Canadiens taking on the Blues in St. Louis, and Jordan Binnington comes up big in this one. 25 save shutout in a 2-0 win for St. Louis. Goals from Jonathan Berggren and Robert Thomas, a shorthanded goal, and that would be plenty for Binnington, who gets the shutout. Jacob Fowler didn't play poorly in net for Montreal, just 2 goals on 19 shots, but obviously no offensive support from the Canadiens, which is surprising. They usually have a pretty potent offense, but not in this one. Credit goes to Jordan Binnington, as St. Louis is 1 point out of a wild card spot in the West. Montreal still in 3rd place in the Atlantic. We had a rare double hat trick in San Jose. Details on that coming up next here on Locked On NHL Game Night. Fridays already feel different during basketball season, and FanDuel is making them even better. Every Friday night before the games tip off, FanDuel gives fans a new way to kick off the weekend with NBA Happy Hour. NBA Happy Hour is your official pregame limited time window where special offers drop right inside the FanDuel app before the action starts. Fridays from 6 to 7:30 Eastern Time have become appointment viewing with NBA Happy Hour. Opening the FanDuel app, you'll see that the happy hour always brings something new, boosts, bonuses, and surprises. It's easy to check the weekly special before tip-off and move before the window closes. It's the perfect timing right before the games and right before the weekend starts. It adds extra energy to Friday night basketball without overthinking it. So before tip-off, check the FanDuel app and see what's dropping during NBA Happy Hour every Friday from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Eastern. A little basketball, a little action, and a whole lot of Friday energy. That's NBA Happy Hour, only on FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. We have the Lightning in San Jose taking on the Sharks, and Tampa Bay is streaking right now with a convincing 7-2 win over the Sharks, and a big game for Tampa Bay defenseman Darren Radish. A goal in the first, his 10th of the year, a goal in the second on the power play, his 11th of the year, and a goal in the second period as well. 2 goals. Also a power play goal as well for Darren Radish, who gets his first career NHL hat trick. Braden Point, Brandon Hagel, Nikita Kucherov gets his 20th. Lots of offensive weapons for this very talented Tampa Bay team as they get their 7th win in a row, and they now have the most points in the Eastern Conference with 53. Tampa Bay at 25-13-3, also now in first place in the Atlantic Division. A lot of high hopes for this Tampa Bay team. A lot of people predicting them to be in the Stanley Cup final at the beginning of the year. Didn't get off to the start they wanted. They have had some injury issues, but right now firing on all cylinders as they go through their West Coast trip and are just racking up the victories right now. In defeat for San Jose, all 3 of their goals came from the same man as well. Pavel Regenda with the hat trick, goals 3, 4, and 5 on the season, and that's his first career NHL hat trick. So we had 2 players in the same game, both getting their first NHL hat tricks. And here's a little weird stat for you. It happened earlier this season as well, and it involved the brother of Darren Radish. Taylor Radish gets the hat trick as well earlier this year, and in a game that Macklin Celebrini of the Sharks also got his first NHL hat trick. So the Radish brothers getting their first ever NHL hat tricks in the same season, and they do it against the same opponent. That is very, very unique indeed. Let's get a report real quick from the host of Locked On San Jose Sharks about this one, and that is JD Young.
The San Jose Sharks get bullied by the Tampa Bay Lightning as they fall 7-3. Defensive miscues and a very leaky penalty kill are the name of the game as the San Jose Sharks give up a hat trick to defenseman Darren Radish. That was the type of day it was for San Jose. Just could not get anything together. The only positive coming out of this game is Pavel Regenda getting his first career hat trick, but just a poor performance for San Jose as their win streak gets snapped at 3.
And also for San Jose, they would later find out because of another result that they would now be out of a wild card spot in the West. So that defeat helped them to drop out of a playoff spot, at least for the moment. We had the Flyers in Edmonton taking on the Oilers in Philadelphia. Gets a very nice 5-2 victory over the top team of the Pacific, and they were helped out by a fast start in this one as they scored the first 3 goals of this game, all in the opening period. Denver Barkley gets his first career NHL goal to lead it off. He also had goals from Travis Sanheim and Bobby Brink. No goals in the second, but then the only 2 goals in the third also coming from Philadelphia. Nick Seeler gets his first, and Owen Tippett seals it with an empty net goal, his 13th of the season. Plenty of offense for Dan Vladar, who continues to play very well for Philadelphia. 2 goals on 24 shots for Vladar in the victory. For Philadelphia, they've won 4 of 6, and they are into third place in the Metropolitan Division. They're actually just 2 points out of first place in the division, as well as the Flyers looking well ahead on their rebuild, if you will, to try and get back to prominence in the Eastern Conference. Meanwhile, for the Edmonton Oilers, they're still on top in the Pacific, but loss on home ice, their 3rd loss in the last 4 games. Let's get a report on them from the host of Locked On Edmonton Oilers, Nick Zararis.
Oilers once again doomed by a bad start. The Oilers falling 5-2 in a Saturday matinee to the Philadelphia Flyers, splitting the season series for a 5th straight season between the Oilers and the Flyers. On an afternoon where the Flyers got out to a 3-0 lead, it seemed like the Oilers were doomed. But Darnell Nurse engaged Garnet Hathaway in a very poor fight where neither guy landed very many punches, and Nurse ended up on the ground, but spurred a Connor McDavid goal. The Oilers ultimately got to a power play, got this game within 1, spent a majority of the second and third period trying to close that gap to find that consequential game-tying opportunity. But the Flyers did a tremendous job defensively, the Oilers being held to just 6 shots on goal in the third period and only 5 in the second. And this is a game that the Oilers trailed for a great majority of. Typically, if a team is trailing by 2 or 3 goals for an extended period of time, the team that is chasing is going to have a majority of possession, but that ultimately did not turn out to be the case. The Oilers losing 2 in a row for the first time since November. The Oilers are still figuring out what they are in 2026.
And we thank Nick Zararis for that report on the Oilers. Yes, Connor McDavid did get a goal, his 25th of the season. Calvin Pickard allowed 4 goals on 28 shots in the loss. And as I mentioned, Edmonton still in first in the Pacific by 1 point, but they have lost 3 of their last 4. We have the Senators hosting the Jets, and Ottawa gets a 4-2 win to send Winnipeg to their 9th loss in a row. It has been a real struggle for the defending President's Trophy champions. Let's get a report on this one, though, from the winning side, from one of the co-hosts of Locked On Edmonton Oilers. That's Brandon Pillar.
The Ottawa Senators remain undefeated in 2026. I'm Brandon Pillar from the Locked On Senators podcast, and the Winnipeg Jets came to Ottawa on an 8-game losing streak and in last place, and the Sens hand them a 4-2 loss to extend it to 9 straight losses, and the Sens have won 2 in a row thanks to 2 goals from Thomas Chabot, and Tim Stützle extends his point streak to 12 straight games. Levi Merrillainen gets the win. We're fired up about this one. Come join us in the postcast after the game, and of course, we'll talk about it more on Monday's episode of the Locked On Senators podcast. It's your team every day.
All right, thanks to Brandon Pillar for that. And if Ottawa, there's not a lot of easy wins in the NHL this year. Matter of fact, really very few. It's that tight, it's that close, it's that competitive that you look at the schedule for your favorite team going forward and you're like, oh, that's a tough game, that's a tough game, that's a tough game. Maybe Winnipeg right now is the one team you kind of circle and be like, well, we can maybe take advantage of that team. And that's crazy considering the talent on that team and how good they were a year ago. But Ottawa gets a much needed win over a struggling team, trying to get back into that wild card spot in the Eastern Conference. He mentioned Thomas Chabot had a pair of goals. Drake Batherson, 16th of the year, was the game winner, enough for Levi Merrillainen, who had 2 goals on 23 shots. So Ottawa right now 2 points out of a wild card spot in the East. Yes, there's a lot of teams that are around them as well, but they have to get 2 points against teams that are struggling, and they did in this one. Kyle Connor gets his 19th for Winnipeg, but Connor Hellebuck allowed 4 goals on 27 shots, and it is just not going well for the Winnipeg Jets right now. 15-21-4 on the season and 9 losses in a row for the defending President's Trophy winners from a year ago. The Penguins were in Detroit to take on the Red Wings, and Pittsburgh continues to be that up and down streaky team. They're streaking in the right direction at the moment as they get a 4-1 road win in Hockeytown. Brian Rust gets his 16th of the year, and then Yegor Chinnikov scores his first as a Penguin. Just recently came over in that trade from the Columbus Blue Jackets. Pittsburgh's off to a 2-0 lead. Alex DeBrincat would score the only goal of the second period, his 22nd of the year, but Pittsburgh comes back with 2 more goals in the third. Ricard Raquel and Connor Dewar. Stuart Skinner, 1 goal allowed, only had to face 12 shots, as that's a season low shots on goal for the Detroit Red Wings this year. John Gibson allowing just 2 goals on 29 shots in this one, taking the loss. But Pittsburgh's won 4 in a row. They've won 5 of 6. They had that big losing streak before that, but now they've swung back in the other direction, and the Penguins are actually holding the final wildcard spot in the Eastern Conference right now. For Detroit, that's back-to-back losses to the Penguins in a home-and-home with them. But they fall out of first place in the Atlantic Division, as the Red Wings are now in second place behind the Tampa Bay Lightning. My LA Kings were in action, looking for a much-needed victory. We'll tell you how they did next here on Locked On NHL Game Night. Hey, thank you for making Locked On NHL Game Night your first listen of the day, and thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. You live your team every day, and now it's time to take it to the next level and go ad-free. Join the Everydayers Club today and get Locked On NHL Game Night with no interruptions, members-only Discord access, and more, all for just $5 a month or $50 a year. Check the link in the show notes to learn more. The LA Kings were taking on a very good Minnesota Wild team, trying to move up in the Central Division standings and try and get that second spot at least and home ice advantage in the first round in their likely matchup against the Dallas Stars. Meanwhile, LA trying to get back in a wild card spot after struggling of late, and the Kings would pull out a much-needed 5-4 victory in a shootout. Quentin Byfield gets a goal, a much-needed goal for him. He has really been struggling this year. Adrian Kempe, 14th of the year, but it goes to the shootout, and defenseman Brant Clark ends up with the shootout game winner for the LA Kings. The Kings move back into the final wildcard spot in the West, knocking San Jose out of a wildcard spot. A much needed 2 points for the Kings, who have really been struggling of late. Meanwhile, for Minnesota, they do get a goal from Matt Boldy, his 26th of the season. They did come back a couple of different times in this one to at least pull out a point. We'll tell you that was important. But first, let's get a report on this game from the host of Locked On Minnesota Wild, and that's Seth Topol.
Some context to tonight's 5-4 shootout loss to the Los Angeles Kings. If this was a game on regular rest, I'd probably be upset at the fact that the Wild blew 4 different leads and lost in a shootout. But the fact that this was the second night of a back-to-back against a team that is big and physical like the Los Angeles Kings, how about the fact that the Wild rallied back from 4 different deficits in this game and managed to get a point against a tough Los Angeles Kings team, even though their record suggests that they are not having a good season. The Kings, with the 2 points, move into a playoff spot. So for tonight, I will say it was good that the Wild were able to rally to get a point, but now you got to go get the 2 on Monday with a full day of rest in between. For more on the Minnesota Wild, make sure you follow Locked On Wild wherever you listen to your podcasts.
And Seth was nice enough to mention that the Kings moved into a wild card spot with that win, so I will return the favor and let you know that the Wild moved into second place in the Central Division with that 1 point in the shootout loss, as again, they are trying to get home ice advantage in their likely first-round matchup against the very tough Dallas Stars. Right now, in second place, they would have home ice as it stands at the moment. And he mentioned about getting 2 points in the next game. The Kings and Wild will play again on Monday, again in Los Angeles. A weird quirk in the schedule, but the same 2 teams playing in the same location in a span of 3 different days. We had the Bruins taking on the Canucks in Vancouver. Once upon a time, a big Stanley Cup final matchup. This one, though, two teams struggling, trying to just rack up as many wins as they can. Boston looking to get back in the postseason race in the East, and they get a much-needed 2 points as well, like the Kings did. 3-2 overtime victory for Boston. The man that started the scoring for him was the man that ended the scoring for them, and that would be Fraser Minton. He scored on the power play in the first period, his 7th of the year, and then he gets the overtime game winner, his 8th of the season, to get Boston the 2 points, puts in a loose puck in the crease after a shot on goal, and Boston skates off with the victory and the 2 points. Jeremy Swayman strong in net, allowed 2 goals on 33 shots in this one. Again, Boston looking to get back in that wild card race in the Eastern Conference. Meanwhile, another disappointing loss for the Vancouver Canucks on home ice. We had the Mammoth on the road against the Devils. New Jersey, though, getting the 4-1 victory in this one. This one was pretty much all New Jersey. 2 goals in the first, Jesper Bratt and Timo Meier. 2 goals in the second, Nico Hischier and Dougie Hamilton. And that was plenty for Jacob Markstrom, who allowed just 1 goal on 29 shots for the win in net. New Jersey remaining a point out of that final wildcard spot in the East. But again, all those points are precious when you're battling for a wildcard spot in the East or the West. Utah certainly could have used the 2 points in this one, but they only get a Michael Carcone goal. Kirill Velmelko allowed 4 goals on 30 shots. That's losses in 3 of 4 for Utah, and so they remain 2 points out of the final wildcard spot in the West. A disappointing result for the Utah Mammoth. And that brings us to the Predators taking on the Flames in Calgary, and Nashville is coming on strong of late as they eke out a 4-3 victory on the road. Eric Hulla scored a couple of goals in the first period for him, numbers 6 and 7 on the season. Michael Bunting would get his 11th in the second period, and then they would need a Nicholas Hague goal with 29 seconds left to pull out the victory and get the 2 points, just his second goal of the year. The defenseman just fires a shot from the blue line through some bodies. It finds the back of the net, and that's the game winner for Nashville. UC Saros allowed 3 goals on 23 shots as the Predators have won 6 of 8, and they're just 1 point out of a wild card spot in the West. There were a lot of times this year where people were saying Nashville was clearly going to be a seller. They needed to break up this team. They needed to start a retool or rebuild. Well, they've stuck with it, and they at least right now are in the mix in a very competitive Western Conference wildcard race. Right now for Calgary, their 3-game winning streak comes to an end. They're 3 points out of a wildcard spot in the West. So this was, again, when you're in this position, when you're Nashville, when you're Calgary, any points are precious points at this time of the year. But Blake Coleman gets his 13th of the year. That tied it up. Looked like maybe Calgary would go to overtime and get a point out of this one, but not, unfortunately for them, the case in this one. And now we come to our final game of Saturday, and that was in D.C., where the Capitals are hosting the Blackhawks, and Chicago gets the 3-2 shootout victory. Ryan Donato's 10th in the first. Teuvo Teravainen gets his 9th on the power play in the second. And then in the shootout, it was Nick Foligno in the 6th round getting the shootout game winner. Nick Foligno, not really known for his shootout skills, as far as I know. Kind of a rugged forward that's a good forechecker, gives you good leadership, all that kind of stuff. He is the captain for Chicago, but he comes through with the shootout game winner in this one for the Blackhawks. Meanwhile, for the Caps, struggling a bit right now. They get a Dylan Strome goal. They get a Ryan Leonard goal to force overtime and get him a point out of this. But they've lost 6 of 8, and they are right now in that number 1 wildcard spot in the Eastern Conference. So there you have it, a recap of a very busy Saturday in the National Hockey League. If you want complete coverage of your favorite NHL team, find the Locked On NHL Team Podcast and YouTube show for your squad. And of course, Locked On NHL Game Night is here for you every night, covering every game until a Stanley Cup champion is crowned on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. And thanks for tuning in to Locked On NHL Game Night. Make sure you subscribe and follow so you get all the latest episodes. Did Locked On NHL Game Night make your Spotify Wrapped? Prove it on social media to secure a free month of our brand new Everydayers Club. Just tag our national Locked On Podcast Network account on any social platform, and we'll drop you a code. Be one of the first to join the Everydayers Club and get your favorite show ad-free and exclusive access to the the members-only Discord channel. That'll do it for this edition of Locked On NHL Game Night. I'm Eddie Garcia. Thanks for listening and watching Locked On NHL Game Night, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day.